Very special guest on Higher Learning joins us right now, Pete Aguilar, who is a member of the U.S. House of Representatives. He is a man who is very consequential in American society right now. As he is a part of the U.S. House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. And I have to be honest with you, Pete. There's a lot of smoke and talk around the January 6th committee, all right? But there seems to be even more talk and smoke around happenings in Washington right now with the ex-president, and exactly, what the hell is happening and what's going on. So we appreciate you joining us on Higher Learning today. Very happy to have you. But I guess the first question that I'll ask you that a lot of people are probably wondering is the FBI serving a search warrant or using the search warrant to go into Mar-a-Lago and investigate the former president's belongings or his potential collection of classified documents? Is that in any way, shape, or form related to the investigation into January 6th?
Well, first of all, Rachel and Van, thank you so much for having me and introducing me to your audience. I appreciate the question, Van. I think this is something that people are asking across the country. And my answer is, I don't believe so. There are some things that the Department of Justice is doing that none of us know, but it isn't, we don't believe that these are connected. We are on a parallel path. Our investigation is a congressional investigation, and we're supposed to find out what happened on January 6th, what were the causes of January 6th, what led up to it, the factors that led up to the insurrection at the United States Capitol. What the Department of Justice is looking at, we believe, based on what we have seen, is specifically tied to documents that the former president had in his possession at Mar-a-Lago. Now, when this is all said and done, there may be some overlap in witnesses that each entity has talked to, but what they are executing in the search warrant side is completely separate and apart from our investigation on January 6th.
In response to the January 6th committee and the hearings that we've seen so far, what do you think the response has been from the American public?
I think many in the American public were a little bit skeptical when we created this committee. They didn't know what it would do. They knew that the president did something. He didn't act appropriately leading up to January 20th and the peaceful transfer of power, but they didn't quite know what happened. They just saw the images that we all saw on TV of violence at the United States Capitol. But what we do know is we have done 8 public hearings to date. Over 100 million people have tuned in to a portion of these hearings. And even if folks just tuned in for a little bit, we know that they have picked up on the fact that we are introducing them to individuals generally who worked for the former president of the United States, who are telling the truth and are talking about the former president's efforts and those around him to stop a peaceful transfer of power, which really is the hallmark of a democracy in the democratic system.
Do you think that in any way, whether or not there's material evidence that links anything that the president had at Mar-a-Lago to the investigation that you guys are doing into January 6th, do you think that any way that it's starting to become evident to some Americans a pattern of recklessness or lawlessness that seems to have infected the past administration? You have him in the center of this investigation into what happened on January 6th, but then you also have him really allegedly, or it's being talked about, that he took some really sensitive documents to Mar-a-Lago that would really fly in the face of not just how we've done it in this country, but some would say in the face of our security. It just doesn't seem that they care about any sort of protocols that are put in place to facilitate things like the peaceful transfer of power or to safeguard American intelligence information. Do you feel like the case that's happening now in any way bolsters some of the claims that people are making against Trump that have testified with the January 6th committee?
I do, because I feel that people have seen a portion of our hearings and they acknowledge and they now know and understand that he has a propensity not to be completely honest, to surround himself with people who want to meet the same objectives and goals that he wants to meet above all else, legal or otherwise. Those are some of the pieces that we were able to uncover in the January 6th committee hearings. And what we laid out is that the president was in the Oval Office and his own lawyers said that this effort was unconstitutional and he proceeded. We knew that the president had tweeted that the former vice president, Mike Pence, didn't have the courage to do what was right. But what we didn't know until the hearings took place is that at that time, he knew that there was violence in the Capitol. He knew that rioters were inside the building. So his tweet served as a message to them. And then we found out that the rioters were 40 steps away from Mike Pence, and that some of them had indicated in Department of Justice documents that they would have likely killed him if they would have found him. So, those are some pieces that really get to the character of the former president that I think are informative in the current Mar-a-Lago discussions.
You said that there will be future hearings, right, in regards to what the committee is doing. What will those future hearings entail? What type of witnesses are you looking for? And what type of testimony? And if you haven't already, will that cross over with some of the investigations that are currently going on with Mar-a-Lago? Does that change what you're looking for in regards to your testimony and witnesses?
I don't believe it changes what we're looking for. But what we left the hearings talking about, what happened on January 6th and January 7th. We still feel that there is more to tell related to the former president's state of mind after that period, from the 6th, 7th, 8th through January 20th, when President-elect Joe Biden was sworn into office. We feel that it's informative to share with people what the former president's state of mind was during that time, to take people into what was happening. We also feel that there's more information that continues to come our way. Public reports have talked about the Secret Service discussions and missing text messages. What exactly were they planning for on January 6th? We feel that there's more to unravel there. We feel that this is a separate track than the Department of Justice is going through, though. But we do feel that it's informative to tell the full and complete story about what happened on January 6th.
Pete, I got a small bone to pick with you. I like you a lot, but I have to pick this bone. I saw an interview with you about a month ago when you were describing Mike Pence's his conduct subsequent to the January 6th attack. And you said that he acted presidential during the time that he made the decision to not overthrow the government. He made the decision to sort of wrangle in whatever forces or powers that he needed to in order to facilitate the peaceful transition of power. And you came under some fire for that, because a lot of people would say that it's not prudent to congratulate Mike Pence for doing what essentially is his job. And they were asking for the bottom of the barrel from some Republicans when it comes to what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And that others might even say that the Democrats are too quick to be congratulatory and conciliatory to Republicans for basic decency. Do you understand those criticisms? And why did you say that Mike Pence acted presidentially by not helping Trump overthrow the government?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and some of my family members have asked the same thing, Van. But and look, let me have some equal time to explain it. And you're right. The lowest common denominator, unfortunately, with many of my Republican colleagues is basic decency and doing your job. But what I said was, in that moment, in that day, he was the only one that was acting presidential. He was in an undisclosed location in the United States Capitol. And he was surrounded by Secret Service agents. There's been pictures of them. And he was the only one talking to military leaders on the phone, checking in with congressional leaders, Democrats and Republicans, asking them what they needed, how they were doing, while he is tucked away underground in the United States Capitol. That to me is a partisan Democrat. I need to be honest and to tell people that in that moment, in that day, he resisted the pressure that we knew the former president put on him for weeks, and he did his job. And for that, I would say that he did act presidential because he had a focus on what the country was doing, how the country was feeling, what congressional leadership was doing to clear the Capitol and to carry on with business. So I would stick with that. And I will tell you, Chairman Benny Thompson said the same thing in his opening statement for the hearing that I chaired in June, that Mike Pence did his job. And we need to be able to say that. Now, I think he has been less than forthcoming with exactly the threats that he was facing that day, the pressure that led up to it. We have heard from his attorney and his chief of staff, but he has not come forward and talked with us. He has not shared that they were leading prayer circles to start their day, and that he was reading Bible passages as he ended his day, and that members of his staff were praying and calling their pastors while they were tucked away, thinking presumably that they could lose their lives. He hasn't shared any of that with us, and I think he could be more forthcoming, but I think his actions were commendable, and I would say still presidential in that moment, in that day.
Are you looking forward to running with him on his ticket in 2024?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm going to take a hard pass on that one, Dan. In some of these interviews, I have said, look, this is a guy who stood behind with a grin on his face as the former president was separating parents from babies. Wow. At the southern border. I mean, this is a guy whose loyalty seemingly knew no bounds, but he decided to follow the Constitution, thankfully for all of us. But that doesn't mean he's without fault for the 5 years he stood behind the guy.
Do you think he'll tap back into that presidential spirit and come and testify before the committee? Do you foresee that happening?
Well, we've had conversations with his attorneys. My hope is that if he's asked, he would come before us. And my hope is that we still get to a point where that happens. But he has said publicly that it was one day in time and that he wants to turn the page and move forward. So nothing leads me to believe he's very interested in that. But it's our hope that we still, for the historical record, be able to tell the full and complete story that day. I think we need to hear from him.
Why hasn't he been asked yet?
Well, there's a lot of discussions, about that and about the timing of this. We are under some time constraints. And I think the committee has had, a lot of discussions about this. There's still more investigative steps to proceed with, and we're not closing any doors. But to date, the committee hasn't made a decision to ask him to come in. That's all I can say.
There have been bipartisan calls to have the Justice Department brief Congress on exactly what was found at Mar-a-Lago, even if it's, to a specific committee, and even if those briefings are classified, even if nobody ever knows the terms of the public, because look, I don't know what's classified, what's not classified. I thought when something was classified, then that meant a bunch of guys sat around and said no one could ever know. And then Trump says, it's not classified if I take it home. That's crazy. My brother used to say that, like when he would leave town, to be like, I'm not married when I leave town.
Oh gosh.
I didn't know you could have standing orders like that. So look, are you for having the Justice Department brief Congress and having the intelligence community have conversations with you guys, having the Justice Department have conversations on behalf of the intelligence community and really kind of sort out what exactly was found, just so it in some way justifies what people call the unprecedented act of searching a former president's home. Is that something that you would like to see Merrick Garland and the Justice Department do, or are you okay with them just taking as much time as they need to investigate this in whatever way they see fit?
They should take the time that they need in order to do the job and to get it done right, and to prove that no one is above the law, including the former president of the United States. There can't be a one justice system for those who are rich and former presidents, and one for everyone else. And so they need to do their job. I will tell you, I would not support something that is a briefing to the entire every elected official, because there are some of these elected officials who I don't think should be trusted with this type of sensitive information. But there is in Washington there's a group called the Gang of Eight, which is the legislative leaders in the House and Senate and the intelligence chair and ranking member, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans. Maybe the intelligence community should brief those top 8 legislative leaders on exactly what they found, just so they know what the threats are and what could potentially be out there. But I wouldn't support anything that was for all 535 elected officials. I don't think that that's necessary, but maybe for the closest intelligence individuals, they get a separate briefing.
Do you have any idea why a former president would take classified information to his private residence?
No, but this is something that, he clearly had done in the past. And some of the people who had briefed him in the White House indicated that he oftentimes tried to take the documents back with him to the residence. They would give him an iPad with the material just so they can ensure that they received it back from him. I do know that they had a secure facility at one point in Mar-a-Lago so they could brief him. When we go into these classified settings, it's a closed door. It's got a separate lock on it, no electronics, no devices on you at all. And usually you are shown documents and then they take them back. That's how this works. The fact that he had some of these in briefcases and in boxes just laying around unlocked for many months, and then a simple padlock potentially on a basement door, I think it's incredibly scary. And the information that he had access to that could benefit foreign countries is there's volumes of it. And so I think this is something that we absolutely need to take seriously and ensure that if you or I had access to these documents and wandered home with them, we would not be treated in a way that gives a lot of deference. And so we need to make sure that the laws apply evenly.
You've stated before that your concern is that January 6th could happen again. With what happened at Mar-a-Lago in the FBI's investigation, how worried are you that there's talk of a civil war, there's talk about this happening on a grander scale than January 6th. How worried are you that could actually happen again? Because it seems no matter what you're doing, there are people who are going to support him and believe him and any rhetoric that he puts out there as an excuse as to why there were documents there or any of his behavior at this point.
I'll just say broadly that I'm very worried. I'm very worried that individuals are now going to law enforcement, going to the FBI with guns and shooting. The Ohio incident is deeply troubling. The Department of Homeland Security just put a memo out on Friday indicating a heightened level of domestic threats as well. The FBI director has said this is in the past testimony he gave indicated that domestic terrorism was the number one thing that kept him up at night. That's all incredibly troubling. And the common thread is that the former president enabled this. When he tells folks, stand back and stand by, and he doesn't speak out against domestic violent extremism, that's incredibly troubling, because he's asking them to just wait by and wait for his orders. And we received testimony from one insurrectionist that we played in the public. And what scared me about that is the individual said, the former president asked me to do 2 things. He asked me to vote for him, and he asked me to come on January 6th. And I felt I owed it to him to do both. And so there are people that feel this way. And Rachel, nothing has changed. Some of them got caught. Some of them who came got charged, but they still feel that way. maybe for years during the Obama administration, they were able to kind of tuck it away, and nobody gave them the ability to talk about it freely and openly. And now they have platforms. They have someone who had the highest office in the land who espoused these beliefs, told them it was okay, made up slogans and T-shirts, rewarded them in every way. And so that still scares me, that there's a lot of people who would do harm to the democracy and us as an institution, and throw around words like civil war, just because their political person that they supported wasn't successful.
Last question from me. I personally believe that what happened on January 6th was intentional to the degree that it was supposed to be something that intimidated lawmakers from their constitutional duty to transfer power to the candidate that beat Donald Trump in the 2020 election. I believe that. I believe that nothing that happens with this president is quite an accident. I think that he knows what he wants to do. To that end, I'm wondering, do you believe that President Trump had classified documents in his personal residence with the intention of sharing that information with anyone outside of this of the intelligence apparatus or the lawmaking apparatus of this country? Do you believe that there's even the chance that the information that was at Mar-a-Lago was going to find its way across a sea or an ocean somewhere to some unfriendly nation to the United States? Do you believe that that's possible with Donald Trump?
Yes, given what we have seen so far, I am deeply scared at the level of documents that he maintained in his possession, even after they asked him to return everything, even after he received a subpoena for anything that was classified or top secret. I'm deeply concerned that there were documents there that, if they fell into the wrong hands, could pose a threat to our country. And I think he has proven that he's incredibly cavalier in wanting to show off and show people things that make him feel important. And so in that respect, I do share that feeling, and I'm deeply scared about where this goes, and what the facts truly are with his intentions for those documents.
Do you think that this investigation with Mar-a-Lago helps Trump's political, well, assuming that he might run again in 2024, do you think that this helps him? And then I would also ask you, do you think this helps or hurts the GOP with everything that's going on?
It's clear from some public reporting that when this happened, when the search happened on Monday, Tuesday last week, he actually felt that this was going to, bring his supporters together. That he was going to, be able to speak out and to tell them that this was the deep state who was acting out on him because he could win an election again. His tone changed a little bit, and he's done everything from accusing the FBI from planting documents to saying that these were attorney-client documents now. So he really just has taken an approach to throw everything at the wall. But I still remain scared about what those documents entail. And I do feel that in his mind, he could, shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and get away with it. That's exactly what he said years ago. And I think he still feels that way. He could be indicted. He could be in trial. He could have so many other things happen to him, and people will still believe him. He will still have a core group of 38% of the country that will believe it. And so we have to appeal. And that's been the goal of the January 6th committee. How do we appeal to everyone else? Democrat, Republican, Independent. How do we appeal to those folks to talk with them about a peaceful transfer of power, about the importance of protecting democracy and just how fragile it is?
Pete, you're a nice guy. You're a nice guy, Pete. Pete, what's the most ratchet thing about Pete? What's Pete's dark side here. What's your favorite R-rated movie? What's your favorite site you shouldn't be going to? Pete, give me. I gotta have something, Pete. You're too buttoned up. You might just be the future of this damn party, Pete. What is Pete into what do you do that you're not supposed to be doing?
Oh man, I'll tell you. You want to talk? Yeah, I can't really go MCU with you all day long, man. But I'll tell you, you want to have me on like fantasy football, chats and put me on a pod, with the Ringer crew on the sports side. LA Dodgers, I got over.
I see you over there with the Dodgers.
But I usually have like 3 fantasy football teams going at any given time. When I'm on the plane, if I'm not working or reading memos, I'm checking on my team, who's injured, what's going on. But I love sports. Always have loved sports.
Competitive.
But yeah, man, I'm a nerd. I'm just hanging out here, trying to do my job, protecting democracy.
All right, Pete,
and we thank you for that.
We thank you very much. If we have any other questions on what's going on with January 6th, hopefully you guys aren't just all doing this for show and there are charges that come from this, hopefully. If we have any other questions, we'll reach out to you. Just, try not to throw that presidential word around too much there, Pete.
I hear you, man. I hear you. You and my grandmother have the same feedback, so I got to listen now. I got to listen.
All right, then. Thank you so much for joining us today on Higher Learning.